All right, welcome to another live episode of geekoutdoors.com. Now, this is a weekly live show that I do, and hopefully people are waking up early enough to actually see this. So this week I wanted to do something a little different, but it's not really too different. So every week we talk about Linux, okay? And I do a lot of Linux stuff on my channel, but my channel is a geek variety channel. But I think like a lot of people who do watch my channels, most of them watch it for the Linux stuff. And so today I wanted to do, I guess, like my own personal experience, and then for anyone who's on this episode, you know, how really Linux changed my life, you know. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but it really did, you know. And so I'm gonna basically be talking about my experiences, and a lot of my episodes, if you haven't noticed, I do have an idea of like what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so I definitely do jot down notes, but a lot of it is on the fly. And so if you are on these episodes, you know, I'll probably, you know, ping back and forth having a conversation with anybody who's watching. All right, the first person on there is Shatter. Hello, Geek Outdoors, and everybody else. Greetings. Thank you, Shatter, for being on. This is going to be a really cool Linux episode. At least I think it is. And so if you had any things that you wanted to discuss also as well as we're having this conversation, that would be great. And so this episode, if you didn't see the title, it's about how Linux changed my life. And if you haven't heard of the stories of how I got into Linux, I've done many videos on that, and I actually can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But cheers. Yes, that's right. So for Linux, whenever I got into Linux, and it was more like, I wouldn't say an accident, but I've been in technology for a while. And to go back even further, my very first experience with a personal computer was actually through a Commodore 64. And I did do an episode of that where I did an episode talking with my best friend when I was a kid, and he's still my friend to this day. And he introduced me to the whole world of personal computers. Okay, so, you know, I've been around since like for a while, since the first Atari. And so I remember when personal computers were available in people's homes. And I did experience computers before in school. You know, we actually had Macs, you know, and back then Macs were really big, you know. And yeah, Samurai Showdown 2, that's right, Shatter. And Macs were really big back then, and obviously they're a lot bigger now, but they were in a lot of schools. And at the time when I was in school, when I was a kid, we had Macs in there so we could play educational games. So we had things like Number Munchers. And so if you're old enough to remember what that is, it's basically a math game with this character, and whenever you do math problems and you solve it, they would munch on the, I guess, points, I guess. And so that was like kind of like an introduction to computers. And back then, computers, not very many people had personal computers at home, you know, because it wasn't a normal thing, and computers were still very expensive, and they were huge, okay? And so, fast forward, one of my best friends at the time when I was a kid, we loved playing video games. You know, we had Atari and everything else, and he had something that nobody that I knew of had. He had a computer inside his house. That was cool. That was absolutely amazing. I was like, whoa, what is this? And so he had a Commodore 64. You know, it was an old brown computer, huge keyboard. It had something called a floppy drive. Yes, a floppy drive. Oh, Lagas McDougal is on here. Hey, what's up, Lagas? LOL Number Munchers. Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I was at my best friend's house, and he had this brown computer. It had a CRT monitor, and I still have old CRT monitors here. It's all brown. It had said Commodore 64. It had a floppy drive. I mean, like a massive floppy drive. If you remember back then, they had the little 3.5-inch diskettes, but they also had a huge floppy. I think they're like 5-inch floppy. You know, it's a magnetic floppy disk. And the Commodore 64, when my friends first showed it to me, I was like, whoa. This is so awesome, you know. And this was pre-Windows for me, okay. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was pre-Windows. And so, so when we had the Commodore 64, it had, I think, a whopping 16 kilobytes of memory and onboard storage. They didn't really have that separation. I was like, whoa. And I didn't know what that meant. But my friend back then, he was a technology guru. I mean, if you wanted to know about technology, he would be the person you'd go to. And you got to remember, we're like kids. And he was like way beyond anybody else. And so when he showed me the Commodore 64, he was showing me the command line, you know. Hey, Rose, good morning. Hello, shout out to Geek and everything. What's going on? Thank you for joining, Rose. And so when, you know, back then it was all command line, okay? So the Commodore 64, I can't not even remember. I think it was BASIC, or maybe it wasn't BASIC. I can't remember the name of the operating system that they used for C64. Like Gas asked me, floppy drive, I had a cassette drive on my Atari 400 with membrane keyboard and BBS. Yes, yes, it was Atari ST was really popular back then too. I'm sorry. So my friend, you know, booted up his Commodore 64 and command line, 16 kilobytes, all like command line. And so he was like showing me some programming stuff. And back then when you had a Commodore, they gave you this huge instruction manual, right? But it also had programming chapters in there too. Okay, because back then, computers, personal computers, like I said, they were not normal. People don't have them in their homes. You have to remember the time that what they're at. And so these were really meant for super duper geeks. Okay, if you remember all the stories of how Apple and Microsoft were founded, they would go to these homebrew conventions, right? Because only super duper geeks would do this. And so because of that, a lot of them programmed as well. Rose says basic programming, yes. And so the Commodore 64, it actually had programming sections in there. And so my best friend was showing me like how to program, and I tried to put a C64 emulator on here, but unfortunately it didn't work. So and so what happened was, okay, so he typed in a program, and what it did was it made this, I guess like exclamation point, and it jumped off a platform, so it's like swimming. So that was cool. And then also he did a more complex one where it actually had pixels and it created a face that animate. And from that point I was like, wow, that is amazing. And my friend programmed that. He programmed that line by line. There were go-to statements and stuff. I was like, whoa, that's sweet. But then what really got me was when, hey, let's play some games. You play games on this. See, he had controllers and everything, and he had a few games, okay? You gotta remember back then. So the game that we first played, that to this day is probably my most, I guess, a clear experience of gaming on a PC, was this Bruce Lee game. Man, that was so sweet. It's awesome. I was just like, amazing. And if you don't know this game, there's this Bruce Lee game where it's kind of like, I guess, the original Mario Brothers, but fighting. And so you would have this Bruce Lee character, and then you would have this sumo wrestler, and that's what you would do. And then another game we played was Kung Fu Master, okay? And you have to remember the Atari, okay? The Atari, back then, the graphics were really still great for that time, but the Commodore 64 was on another level. So yeah, me and my friend, we played that a lot. I would always go to his house to play the Commodore 64. And eventually, I thought I got a Commodore 64, but now that I think about it, I actually got a Commodore 128. And so that was my first experience with a personal computer. So let me answer some other questions first. Let me see what they're saying. Let me see. Shatter says, Linux YouTuber quits up, got copyright strike because it's Super Castlevania 4 gameplay by Konami. Oh, okay, that's horrible. And you know, I do gameplay on my channels as well. And so that's always a possibility, unfortunately. You know, in one case, just to get off tangent, in one case, I understand being a content creator, you don't want your stuff, you know, like copied and used without your permission in other places. But in other places like gameplay and stuff, especially games that are old and that are not monetarily affecting your company, and at the same time, you're getting free marketing. That part I don't understand, and I know a lot of this stuff is done automatically, programmatically. So, and I love QuitSub's channel, one of my favorite Linux channels. So hopefully he'll be able to get that back. Okay, so okay, cool. So Rose asked, what does Geek think about DRM on W3C? Well, that's kind of off topic, Rose. So maybe I'll talk about that later in our bonus episodes. I haven't really kept up with that, but DRM on anything is pretty much not something I support. Okay, and W3C, that's like the standard for web standards. Okay, so going back to my whole Linux story, or the pre-Linux story. Okay, so that was my first experience with a personal computer, and I thanked him so many times. I really got to thank my best friend, my buddy. He was the one who introduced me to technology, in a sense, like beyond Atari. And that got me into the whole computer technology bug. And then after that, I ended up going to college, and basically I ended up where I am here, So Commodore 64 got me into the PC computing bug, the whole geekiness of it. And then after that, you went to Windows, as everybody else does, And at the time, even though Macs were very popular, they weren't, I would say they weren't as popular, nowhere near as they are now, because by that time, Microsoft Windows had already made their operating system available on multiple platforms. They licensed it out to multiple platforms. So because of that, they had a lot more market share, because with Apple, you have to buy their Apple products to get their operating system on there. Now, later on, I think Apple did try to have the operating system on different types of machines outside of Apple, if I remember correctly, but that didn't turn out too well. And so from there, I went over to Windows. And of course, at that time, everything was command line, so it was DOS, and couldn't remember if it's DOS 3.0 or 3.5. We were still in the whole command line phase, and so going from the Commodore to the Windows DOS, it wasn't like a huge stretch. Although Microsoft Windows, it did so much more. It was like infinitely more powerful, more versatile than my Commodore, hands down. Okay, and so for a long time, using Windows, of course, like everybody else does. I absolutely love Windows, And whenever they released, if I remember correctly, Windows 95, that was a huge shift from command line over to the GUI interface, and that was amazing. And you still have DOS, of course, underneath it, So because this whole GUI interface thing was new to the majority of people. And me and my friend, we actually absolutely loved it, I really loved Windows. Windows 95 was a huge shift, okay? However, it wasn't like my favorite version of the operating system, okay? It wasn't until like years later, and Windows 98 came out, Windows NT, and it was a Windows XP that it's still one of my favorite operating systems, as a matter of fact. It's my favorite version of Windows for sure. It's Windows XP. Just everything worked. It had like a lot of cool features at that time. Things were fast, and I learned so much using Windows XP, because that's, whenever you started computing from command line all the way up, you experimented and you tinkered a lot. And so by that point, you kind of like knew how it worked underneath. Not to say you were like a technical guru or anything, but you have an appreciation for it. Okay, Rose says, I'm still using Windows XP with my second drive. Yes, yeah, that's awesome. I love the Windows XP. I still do. I really wish they would go back to something like that, in terms of just it was solid. It had a lot of features that actually made sense. It was fast. I loved it. And there were other versions of Windows after that, until the last version of Windows that I really loved was Windows 7. So those are my two favorites. But in between that time, I was in college at this time, okay? So now I'm finally getting to my experience with Linux, okay? So me and my best friend, we still love computers. I think at that time, like Doom 2 came out or something like that. I can't remember. But we had all these magazines, okay? Magazines, for people who are too young, that's really how a lot of geeks got their information. So if you were a video gamer, you would get EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly. You would get Game Fan. I think there was a Game Pro magazine as well, but that's how you got a lot of your technology information. And there were a lot of like geek magazines as well. And if I remember correctly, on one of the magazines, it actually had a diskette, a CD-ROM, and it actually had this thing called Red Hat Linux, and we didn't know what that was. And you have to remember, Linux came out in 1991, and so I think there was like the late 90s or something that it came with Red Hat Linux. And I did do a video on that I talked about that. It's just my recollection. And I tried installing it. And that was my very first experience with Linux. And man, if you've ever experienced Linux at the beginning, it was not easy. It's really meant for the super geek. And so even partitioning it, I had such a hard, it took me hours, okay? And then whenever I got Red Hat Linux installed, it was command line once again. I couldn't get basic things working, like the internet, you know, like back then the internet was brand new, so you had like modems, you know, the 56K modems, and it just didn't work. And so I never really could get it to work, you know, like fully. And so because of that, I just like left Linux. I was like, oh man, this is way too complex. And so that was my first experience with Linux. And so, you know, it was a pretty much a short-lived experience. And then around the same time when I was in college, I was already working in a computer lab. Okay, and so in our computer labs, you know, this was our Central University computer labs, and we were using mainframe. Was it mainframe? Yeah, mainframe computers or Unix computers. I can't remember, but everything was command line. If you were, I was in a technology. My major was in technology, and so you would go in there and you would actually do your work there, you know. And they actually had fast internet, so they had like this new internet called 128 kilobit speed that was super fast, you know, at that time. And so we were doing a lot of stuff command line, and they also had Windows 95 machines in there too. That was pretty sweet. And then the new one was like Windows 98 at the time. And so I was already into the whole computing stuff, and I even worked in a computer lab too, where we had these brand new Mac machines. They were like workstations, right? But they also had the brand new iMacs. IMAX. I didn't mean the IMAX movie there, but IMAX. And that's when Apple first released these. You know, they were like in bright colors and stuff. They were really cool. But the main thing that I was working on in the other computer lab, so I was like actually working like, yeah, 2 jobs, yeah, 3 jobs, something like that. And so so in that computer lab, I learned a lot about workstations, and we actually had Adobe products in there. And so you needed Macs to run those at that time, because they were like super beefy. And this was at the time that, you know, you had SGI, Silicon Graphics machines. You know, if you could afford that, that was really the epitome if you wanted to do multimedia. And so, you know, I was still doing the computing stuff, but I never got back to Linux because I had such a really poor experience with Red Hat. And it wasn't until years later, post-college, everything else. And then in I think around 2005, I heard of this thing called Ubuntu. Never heard of it before. That's a weird name. You know, what is Ubuntu thing? So computer magazines were talking about it, and you know, at that time the internet had already like kind of started, right? You know, the internet, it was becoming more common. More people had AOL and stuff like that, right? So I heard about Ubuntu, and if I remember correctly, just like Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu, they had a diskette, you know, a CD-ROM. And, you know, internet speeds still were not fast enough where, you know, nowadays we'd download a whole distro, no problem. But back then, they still had CD-ROMs that you would get with magazines. And I got Ubuntu, and I'm pretty sure that's how I downloaded it, or actually installed it the first time. And I was absolutely amazed, because it was nothing like Red Hat. You know, installing it, you know, it was very, I wouldn't say easy, but it was way easier than Red Hat, okay? And so the installation of Linux now, it's like light years easier. Just trust me. If you've ever tried Linux back then and you try Linux now, not even in the same universe, okay? But whenever I got Ubuntu installed, I was like, wow, this is like Windows. It's like, okay. And it was like fast. I mean, like compared to my Windows machines, I couldn't believe it, because I'm like, whoa. And you got to remember, there's like early versions of Ubuntu, so there were still bugs and stuff like that, you know, and some software wasn't available, you know, and so there was still actually some growing pains, okay? But the fact that I was able to have a usable operating system other than Windows on my computer, and, you know, obviously I was not giving up Windows, because this whole Linux thing is new. You know, so I definitely had my Windows machine available. And when I started using Ubuntu more and more, I'm like, this is so awesome. And then the most amazing thing, I still couldn't believe it. It's like, whoa, this is free. It's absolutely free. And if you remember back in the day, I think it was more common that people would, you know, get free versions of Windows. You know what I mean, right? So I think it was way more common back then than it is now. But in this case, I didn't need to worry about any of that. And I still couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa. And then as I started using Ubuntu more and more, as more updated versions of it came out, I was like, this is so impressive, you know. And then at that time, you know, gaming, forget about gaming. I mean, that wasn't even that. I just wanted something basic. I mean, I just wanted to get on the internet, you know, and Ubuntu had that. And then at the time, there was also OpenOffice, okay, that was Sun Microsystems at the time, before they got bought out by Oracle, and now we have LibreOffice. So, but OpenOffice, and which was also before OpenOffice, it was StarOffice, okay, then it became OpenOffice. And so that became my Microsoft Office replacement back then, you know. And obviously I had Firefox for my browser, and I even think Netscape was on there pre-Firefox. And so that was awesome. I was able to do a lot of what I did on my Windows machines, except for obviously the gaming. The gaming, it's still the same problem here. And also there's many other applications. And back then, you really, for Ubuntu, you really only had, I would say, like the basics of what Windows provides, okay? Because obviously Linux is new and all the programs were there. But as Ubuntu got better and better, I found myself using Windows less and less, okay? So I still had my Windows machine, no doubt. But Ubuntu kept getting better. You know, it just kept getting better with every single version. It started looking more polished, okay? It definitely got more stable, because earlier versions of Ubuntu, even though it's more stable than Red Hat, which, you know, I didn't try that long, it kept getting better. And so it gave me more confidence, like, whoa, I could actually use this new Ubuntu Linux operating system as my main operating system. And as each version came out, I was like, okay, well, why don't I go ahead and just try to use Ubuntu exclusively, right? And so at the time, I had my Windows machines, of course, and I had my Ubuntu Linux machine, but I also did partitioning as well, okay? But in the end, that didn't turn out well, because most of the times the Windows partition would mess up my Linux partition, you know, with grub and everything, and it's like, no, you know, I don't want to have to deal with that anymore. And so it wasn't like a few years later I just stopped doing dual partitioning. You know, of course I could get two separate drives and have a different bootloader have the bootloader to load up whichever one I chose. But after a while, I was just like, let me just have a separate Linux machine and then a separate Windows machine. And that's pretty much, I think, the best way to do it. And so what I'm saying is, as I was going along, as I was using Ubuntu or Linux more and more, I felt like I used Windows and I didn't need Windows as much, okay? And then by the time Linux Mint had came out, and this is how it's like slowly but surely started changing my life, because first and foremost, I was able to use a different operating system other than Windows. Okay, it's kind of like the transition from, that's why I told you the story early on, from the Commodore over to Windows. It was like that, okay? And now I'm going from Windows to Linux. It was free, okay? And if you spend a lot of time using Linux, you can do whatever you want, you know? And I wasn't used to that in Windows. Although, me and my friend, we did tinker a lot with Windows. I mean, and I think, in my opinion, the earlier version of Windows, you could actually tinker a lot more now than you can with Windows 10 and stuff. Okay, that's my opinion. Okay, and so with Linux, whatever I felt like doing, I could probably do it in Linux. Okay, if I wanted, you know, to have it look differently. Okay, I could download themes. I could change the way my Windows reacted. You know, I could put like stuff like Compiz on there. That was really cool. And then if I wanted to get deep into the actual technology of it, you can. You could go into the command line and do all types of stuff. You learn so much about how computers work in the real world, because since Linux was Unix based or Unix like, when I got into the corporate work, we actually used Unix. Okay, and so I was using Unix at work and I was using Linux at home. And so it's very similar. I mean, it is. I mean, the commands you put in Unix will pretty much the same commands you put in Linux. Okay, they use the bash shell, so it's the same thing. Okay, and so it was really awesome. And as I was using Linux more and more, and then at work as well, I was using Unix. We were using Sun Solaris, IBM AIX, and I've covered this before in other episodes. And so when I went home, I was like, whoa, let me run some PL/SQL scripts or something. I could do the same thing at home, you know. And then you could run servers, you know, and a lot of people who got into Linux would get into it for the server portion of it, okay? Because once again, at that time, Ubuntu Linux, or just Linux in general, it wasn't known as a desktop operating system, okay? It just wasn't, okay? That's Linux back then, and still most today, it's known more as a more server-based, you know, a type of operating system, okay? So back then, I tried stuff like Apache, you know, I tried to learn more about, I guess I would say, the underpinnings of Linux, okay, because I'm a geek, okay? And then I tried many different distros, you know, after Ubuntu had different flavors. You know, they had the KDE version, which I did use for a long time, and I love the way it looked. It was beautiful, so beautiful, but the performance sucked on it. I'm just to be real, okay, back then. But then I also had experience where I started using other distros like Fedora, and Fedora is actually supported by Red Hat, okay? So Fedora was sweet, you know. I really enjoyed Fedora, and the one actually I liked better than Fedora was OpenSUSE, and OpenSUSE was started by Novell, okay? So a lot of these had beginnings from a larger company, okay? Ubuntu was different. Mike Shuttleworth, you know, I mean, Ubuntu, it's an African phrase. I can't remember exactly the actual meaning of it, but it was started by him, some guy in South Africa, okay? And out of all of them, Ubuntu was my favorite, okay? Hands down, when I first started using distros. Although I really enjoyed OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE was cool because it had this whole green look. It's really cool. I love the theme. It's one of the most beautiful versions of Linux at that time. Besides KDE, of course, and the Fedora. And so I did try other distros over time, and it wasn't until like Linux Mint came out that things just completely changed. So let me see some of the other comments in there first. And so let me see. Shatter says doing a test installing Windows 95 98 in Linux in CLL, LOL. CLL, command line interface. Yeah, that is funny. Rosa says it's going back to free Windows because Microsoft needs to control people, so Microsoft is pushing free Windows 10. Most people feel Windows 10 is crap. I did that. That's why I'm going to Linux. Yeah, that's right. And you know, Rose, I've talked about this before, but both Microsoft and Apple, I think they're going to offer their operating systems for free. Okay, so like even right now, you know, I have Windows 10 on a virtual machine. Even that has like 90, I would say 95 or 99% of all the functionality of full Windows. You know, because they don't make money off selling their operating systems anymore. I mean, they do make money, but they don't make as much money. Okay, and because a lot of the people who buy Windows is OEMs. Okay, nobody really goes out and buy full version of Windows. Or I wouldn't say nobody, but the majority of people don't. You know, they have Windows or Mac OS as part of their computer when they purchase it. You know, they don't go buy it separately. Okay, and so with that being said, I know they're going to offer their operating systems for free, but of course, they're going to get you with other services that they provide, or maybe lock out certain features unless you pay to upgrade, or just a lot of advertising. You know what I mean? And so they will offer it for free, but it's, you know, they're going to make their money somewhere else. Okay, so Shatter says, I'm waiting for Andbox beta release for Android gameplay or Linux desktop. Yeah, okay, cool. And so to continue my story, when Linux Mint, when I first experienced that, you know, by this point, I've already been using Ubuntu Linux distro hop for years and so forth. And so I was fairly confident that I enjoyed and I loved Linux at that time, okay? Because I pretty much stopped using Windows, going back and forth. I still had the Windows machines, but I was pretty much almost fully on Linux, you know? And the only reason I would use Windows is for certain programs and, of course, games. You know, I mean, of course, games. I'm going to have Windows. But then when Linux Mint came out, I don't know. It's like, okay, I already have Ubuntu. Oh, okay, I've already tried these other distros. What's so cool about Linux Mint? And I can't even remember exactly the time that I started Linux Mint. But when I first installed it, I was like, wow, very simple installation. Cool, you know? And then when it was fully installed, Linux Mint had everything. Like, it had all my Office applications already pre-installed. It had GIMP pre-installed. It had other programs pre-installed. It was rock solid. I'm like, whoa, I didn't have to do much at all. I only had to go download a few additional programs. And the thing is, I know Apple uses this tagline, it just works. Linux Mint just worked. And I was just like, whoa, this is awesome. This is amazing. And I kept using Linux Mint more and more. And very similar to my story of, okay, started using Ubuntu, started using Windows less and less. In this case, it was like, I'm using Linux Mint more and more and using Ubuntu less and less. And obviously the other distros, I didn't really use them as my main one. I was just, testing them out. But Linux Mint was, wow, if I could have thought of like a distro or an operating system that could, like, I would say as closest to perfection, at least for me, except for the gaming part, of course, but that's not Linux Mint's fault. But that's the closest to perfection I could think of for an operating system, okay? Number one, easy to install. The simplest install of any Linux distro that I had used at that time. Secondly, this thing had every single program that the majority of people would want. I mean, of course you could go download other stuff, but the majority of stuff you need, your Office applications, your graphics stuff, your accessories, your email stuff, it had Thunderbird, everything built in. Everything was already, it had your chat stuff, your IRC stuff, everything was already built in, okay? And then third, it was rock solid stable. This operating system, Linux Mint, and even when I was using Ubuntu Linux, as the versions kept improving, Linux just crashes way less than Microsoft Windows. That's like amazing when you're coming over from the Windows world. I mean, I rarely crash. The only time, or I would say the only time, the times that I had problems with Linux crashing is normally when I'm testing something. If you're a Linux user, you're going to be testing stuff a lot when you're using it because you're discovering some new stuff. So I would break stuff because I was testing. But if I wasn't doing anything to that, like my Linux operating system, maybe I would have problems like once or twice the whole month. And in some cases, like in Linux Mint and Ubuntu, I had one year, and I had multiple Ubuntu machines, by the way, I had multiple computers, like it would have crashed like maybe 4 times the whole year, And with Linux Mint, solid, And like I said, if I wasn't like experimenting or like trying new kernels or something like that, it would just not break, I didn't have to restart my machine because, unless it was a kernel update or something really critical, like you don't have to restart your Linux machine. And so Linux machine, easy install, had all the programs I needed, rock solid, stable. And then something that I was not expecting, and I didn't really get this with Ubuntu, the Linux community. The Linux Mint community was really strong. Not to say that Ubuntu wasn't, okay? But for some reason, the Linux Mint community is a little different. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, okay? Even though it is based upon Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is based upon Debian, it's like something that I talk a lot about now is the community. And that's kind of how I got into like appreciating this community, this Linux community. And I never really had that with Microsoft Windows, okay? I mean, you did, like early on. That's why I'm telling you this whole story. So early on, you had Windows, DOS, 95 and so forth, NT, Windows 2000. So you could talk to other geeks about that, right? Who were really into that, okay? But when you move over to Linux, and then especially when you find a distro like Linux Mint that you really connect with and in the community, it's like, whoa, it's different. I never had this before. And so that was, Linux Mint made a lot of changes for me, and one of the biggest things it really got me into was the whole Linux open source community. Like it kind of got you introduced to that. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to be as active, but just the fact that now you know of this community in like more ways than you would before. And also, I think the most important thing is you appreciate this community, because the people who use Linux, right? I would really say they're different from the people who only use Windows or only use Mac. They're just a different type of people. They're different cultures, the way they think, and the community is different. And so because of that community, I was able to like learn a lot of things. You were able to connect with a lot of people. I mean, maybe not always, but it's really cool. Like you see something on a forum or a bulletin, like you don't know how to do something, and then somebody out of nowhere, you don't even know what part of the world they're in, they spend time to help you. You know, and I didn't really get that as much from the Windows community as I did in the Linux community. And they would spend extra time like to follow up and help you with it. You know, and that was cool. You know, I really enjoyed that. I mean, even though you don't have to be actively part of it, but just the fact that if you had a question, somebody out there from nowhere would actually help you. Okay, and so that was awesome. And so Linux Mint had pretty much everything except for the gaming part and a few programs. But once again, that's not Linux Mint's fault. It was like the perfect operating system, and it made me truly love Linux even more. You know, I was like, wow, I'm never, well, at that time, and I still think that today, I don't think I'm ever going to use any other operating system as my main operating system. Okay, and I've said it before. If I have to use other operating systems, whether it's Windows or Mac, I will, but it'll be a separate machine. I'm not gonna, Linux is always gonna be my main machine because I love Linux that much. And so Linux Mint, from then on, I pretty much, up until now, I pretty much stopped using any other versions of Linux. You know, every now and then I might try a Linux version, but I don't distro hop because this is why I use my operating system. My operating system is my operating system. This is what I use every single day for everything, right? And so with that being said, Linux Mint provided everything, you know, and that's why I could say from the beginning of the story up until now, Linux did really change my life, you know, because number one, it introduced me to something outside of Windows. That was huge because talk to anybody that you know that have never used anything outside of Microsoft or Apple, and their understanding of what you're able to do with your operating system, what you're able to create, I guess the communities that you're able to get involved with, your level of, you know, I hate to say this, but your level of learning. If you're into Linux, a lot of people who use Linux, they learn a lot more because a lot of times they have to. And then a lot of times, because Linux allows you to do so many things, you don't have any limits to what you can learn. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, so don't take that as like just because you use Microsoft, Windows, or Mac, you're dumber than Linux people. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the nature of Linux really encourages you to learn more and to connect with more people around the world, because that's the nature of Linux. And I gotta go back and thank first Linus Torvalds and Richard Stallman, okay, because together they make the whole Linux operating system, because Linus Torvalds is the Linus, or Linus, some people say, Torvalds, the kernel, right? But then all the other components that actually make the operating system is Richard Stallman. So gotta really thank those two, and you know, and obviously the creation of Unix. If we never had Unix, I don't think Linus or Linus would have ever had the idea to do this, okay? Because he was creating it so then he could have a Unix-like system to work with. And so that like really changed my life. First, like I said, something other than Windows. Secondly, it allowed you to really get into depth with the operating system how you want it. You had freedom. I got to put that out there. Freedom is probably the most important thing. You had freedom with this operating system. And then also money-wise, right? I don't have to upgrade to the newest version of an operating system unless I wanted to. And don't get me wrong, I will pay for software, whether it's open source or proprietary. I don't care. I will pay for it if it's valuable, because I do want to help out the people that actually created this, okay? So that's why I encourage all of you, if you are using Linux or any other software that you enjoy, donate to them. You know, donate to their company, to their community, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be much, because there's actually people behind it creating these amazing things for you. Okay, so that's another thing. I did save a lot of money because I didn't have to pay for the Windows license. I didn't have to upgrade whenever they told me to. I didn't have to pay for like Microsoft Office anymore because I had or at that time, yeah, it was Open Office. And so there's a lot of things that I saved money on. Okay, and then also, if I wanted to install Linux on 20 machines, I could, and I didn't have to pay for them. And so that was another awesome thing, you know. So I saved so much money. If I include all the money I saved since I started using Linux, easily into the thousands of dollars I've saved from using Linux. So what else how else did Linux change my life? Well, it also gave me the opportunity to actually improve my technology skills as well. Okay, so you have to remember that I was in corporate, in the corporation, and I was using Unix, right? And then I was using Linux at home. And so I was able to improve my skills. But nowadays, command line, I'm absolutely horrible with it, okay? But because of those skills that I learned there, even if it's not like a purely like a highly technical field, nowadays, if you understand Linux, right, you understand a lot about how operating systems work. And then if you have Linux skills, that's a benefit. If you were to go get a job or you were to go out and look for business, and you know what Linux is, you understand how it works, you are familiar with the whole environment, then that's going to give you an advantage from somebody who only knows Microsoft or only knows Apple, okay? And then another thing is, you learn how to use so many different open source software, right? And so because of that, you are able to do things, create things, without having to rely purely on programs like Adobe, right? Or video editors like Final Cut Pro, or whatever the case might be. You are creative enough where you learn how to use different open source software. Some are proprietary, of course, but in Linux, most things are open source. So you learn how to get things done with other software. So that means that you are more versatile as well. So that was another benefit how Linux changed my life, because it gave me more skills that you could actually use in the real world, And another thing, and there's so many things that I could list right now, but I'm just going off the top of my head. Linux allowed me to not only learn, but teach other people. And that is probably besides freedom, that's probably one of the biggest benefits that I've ever got out of it. Okay, so when you teach other people how to do something, and it actually improves their life, regardless of what it is, that's absolutely amazing. That's priceless, And so when I was able to teach other people about Linux, even before YouTube, before the internet, it was a great feeling, because they experienced like what I experienced, like, whoa, this is free, and I don't have to use Windows or Mac. Wow. And then you remember people who use Linux, you remember putting this on older machines, and it's like, whoa, I could actually still use my old machines. It's awesome. It's awesome. And, okay, so I kind of want to wrap this up. So I definitely say Linux got me into doing YouTube. Okay, I know there's a lot of things that I talk about on my channel, but you see that a lot of the things that I talk about are Linux related. And I could talk a lot about it because it's improved my life so much. It's changed my life so much. And so it's awesome that I'm able to do this through YouTube, because now I'm able to connect with other people around the world who use Linux, whether they have Linux, Mac, and Windows, or just Linux by itself. But you could connect with other people who understand what you're talking about. And at the same time, not only am I teaching people around the world who actually want to learn this stuff, but at the same time, I'm learning a lot from all of you who use Linux. Because there's so many different skill levels from Linux. And once again, Linux is so versatile. It's not just a desktop operating system. It's not just a kernel that's used to create Android, right? It's not just running on servers. It's everywhere. And because of that, you have so many people with different skill sets underneath. And so I learned so much from all of you out there, like, who knows, I might want to do more development, and I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there. And who knows, I want to learn more about system administration. Lots of people out there who knows that. So Linux brings a lot of people together. You could share a lot of knowledge as well. And so that's probably one of the best things that I've ever got out of Linux, is the fact that it really motivated me. It gave me gave me things to talk about on my Linux channel. On my YouTube channel. And so as you see my YouTube channel, I have a variety of things. It's a variety channel. But if you look at the number of videos I have, Linux is pretty much always going to be my highest number of videos. And I'm very proud of it. You know, I'm very happy also that it's either helped people or it's helping me as well. And so let me go ahead and answer some questions, or just kind of look at the comments. And so, all right, let me see. Breaking, okay, so hey, S. Casburn, thank you for joining. So it's S. Casburn to say, it's interesting to learn more, but most people don't want, it's like console versus PC. Most of player on console choose the system because you don't have to update driver and company. I would agree with you, Casburn, is that most people, they don't want to learn more. But that's why I said I love Linux, because it encourages you to learn. Okay, so definitely it is something that can impact people in a wide array of areas. Okay, so yes, introduce people to Linux and they will learn more, just period. Okay, Shatra's saying mostly breaking issues. You've heard those users that they messed up during tweaking or even updating regular RSR. Fedora is great instead of spin RR or even rawhide fresh. Oh, so he's talking to Rose. Okay, because they're having a discussion back then a little earlier about different versions of Fedora as well. Shatter saying, in my humble opinion, PC is great for gaming instead of any console. Yeah, I mean, you know, PC Master Race. I love both, but honestly, I enjoy the PC more, especially now. You know, especially on Linux, you can do more than you did before. So I'm a PC guy now, and I've been a PC guy for a long time. I.e., Commodore 64. Thank you, buddy, for introducing that to me. There's Shatter explained RSR rolling stable release, RR rolling release, fresh brand, cool. Okay, so working on my own conky scripts. Okay, great conversation here. So Shatter saying RMS, and for people who don't know RMS, that's like oh God, what is the name now? I just talked about him a little bit earlier. My mind completely blanked. Anyway, yeah, Richard Stallman. God, RMS was basically his name, his tagline. That's how he was known in the community, RMS. Okay, and Richard Stallman is, you know, he's kind of weird, but he's an extremely brilliant person. Okay, if you look back in the history, this guy was genius level. Okay, so let me see. So going back to that, RMS versus Jobs versus Torvalds versus Gates. I don't know, Shatter, if I would say it's a versus. I think it's more of each one of them brought something different to the whole technology and just world in general. You know, as much as, you know, we don't like some of the business practices of Microsoft Windows or Apple, just realize that if they weren't around, right, technology would not be where it's at today. We might not even have Linux. Okay, so I think each person contributed a lot to the world, each one of them. You know, like I said, you don't have to agree with who they are or their business practices, but just like think about Richard Stallman. If it wasn't for him, open source software would not be where it is today. You wouldn't be getting Linux for free right now. You definitely would not, because, you know, he created the GNU and the GPL licenses. I mean, open source license. Okay, we wouldn't have this today if it wasn't for Richard Stallman. And obviously, if it wasn't for Linus or whatever, however you want, I'd say Linus Torvalds, we wouldn't have Linux. If we didn't have Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak create Apple, personal computing wouldn't be where it's at today. You know, if we didn't have Microsoft Windows, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, computing would definitely not be where it is today. So each one of these people or groups of people or companies, they've done a lot for the technology world, you know. But like I said, you don't have to agree with everything that they do, but I think you have to appreciate what they've been able to do, you know. So let's go back here. But it's always a fun thing to do the whole, you know, versus, because people are going to do that forever. Yeah. Oh, Shatter said my daily driver with Fedora, RSR, and another one for testing. Thanks, cool to be here. Sorry, my English. No problem, Casper. There's people from all around the world. Okay, so Shatter said Richard M. Stallman, the man of his words. Yeah. You know, it's really cool. If you ever watch his interviews, that guy, he's something else. He's really, I find his interviews really interesting because he doesn't really have a filter. Richard Stallman, he'll come at you. I mean, if he doesn't agree with something. Okay, so those are overall how Linux changed my life. You know, as you've probably watched this, I pretty much gave my whole life story of technology, but Linux truly has and is continually changing my life in so many positive ways. And you know, as this YouTube channel grows, as the community grows, you know, not only for my channel, but many other people who talk about Linux, I think it's going to be even cooler, just way better. You know, you're going to be able to introduce Linux to people at a younger age. You know, because I think, you know, we have to think about, like when we think about Microsoft Windows and Apple Mac, just realize we know that, right? Just realize that's the majority. So that's what people know. And when you talk about Linux, even though it's gotten a lot more popular, we still have a long way to go before, hey, they're teaching Linux in schools, right? Or maybe your child who's like 6, 7 years old, you know, like there's kids like 2 or 3 years old, they're already using iPads, right? Or they're using Windows early on. I would love for the same thing to happen in the whole Linux world. You know, like at least when you learn Linux early on, you know that there's alternatives. Okay, you know that you have freedom. There's freedom for you to use something else. There's freedom for you to learn in other places outside of what's already been given to you. Okay, and so I think that as we go along further and as this wonderful Linux community keeps growing, I think it's going to end up like that, where kids are young, they'll learn about multiple operating systems, and maybe by that point, operating systems, nobody knows what's running underneath anyway. But I just hope that and I think the core philosophies of Linux, they will keep getting better and better, and more people will know about it. Okay, so that's overall everything. Yeah, I love Linux. It has changed my life. Hopefully it's changing your life as well. And I'll continue doing these type of things, because if one person watching these videos and watching all of you talking about it, you know, sharing your own experience, if that got them to get interested in Linux and then to teach other people as well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so now let's go ahead and get into the bonus round of each episode, and let me see what else we got here. Hey, OS Tech Guy, thanks for joining. Shatter is asking, how's thinking on Mint Sonia? Okay, so Shatter, I guess you're asking how is my experience with the latest version of Linux Mint 18.2. To be honest with you, Shatter, I really haven't used it that much. I mean, I have it in a virtual machine. I'm still running 18.1 on my main machine. You know, I don't upgrade unless there's really a compelling reason to. You know, I think I mentioned that before. So the only thing I've really upgraded on my 18.1, I did update my kernel, so I have Linux, the kernel 4.8, and I did get wallpapers. I got the Sonia wallpapers because I absolutely love wallpapers. I know, as basic as that sound, it's beautiful wallpapers. And so I really haven't used 18.2, and at the same time, there weren't like huge changes, and so you know, maybe later, but yeah. I mean, if anything, I'm gonna wait and see how the brand new Linux kernel, the version 4.12, more than likely I'm going to be upgrading to that, because you know, obviously there's going to be more and more point releases, but I want it to be more stable by that point. And so for me, for Sonia, yeah, no reason for me to upgrade, but you know, I think for other people, if you are using Linux for the first time, Linux Mint, of course you're going to have 18.2. And if you're already on 18.1, I don't think it's worth the upgrade, but I think if you are on earlier versions, then yeah, I think it is worth the upgrades. So let's see what else. Shatter, zombified and biased by society and corporation. Well, that's normal. Hate to say it. OS Tech Guy NL asks, are you a retro gamer? Am I a retro gamer? Absolutely. Watch my channel. I probably have, if you go to, I have playlists, by the way. I have a Linux playlist, a movie playlist, but I also have a gaming playlist. There's retro gaming. I love retro gaming. So if you go to my gaming playlist, I probably have like 50, 60 videos, a lot of retro gaming. So yeah, I love retro gaming. This is what I grew up with. I mean, actually, these are games I grew up with, so it's not really retro gaming for me. These are the games that I love. So Shacha says mostly of us are retro gamers. Yeah, you're right. Most of us here. Rose, I don't know which emulator Geek is using. Meme. Oh, this one I'm using here, Rose, is RetroPie. It's a multi-emulator emulator. So I know it sounds stupid, but yeah, it could do like a lot of different systems. You know, Super Nintendo, obviously here, Neo Geo. It can do MAME, Genesis. It does a lot. Okay, my favorite is still MAME. Okay, but RetroPie is really cool, and you could also make a whole, you know, arcade cabinet board and put a different interface on it where it's purely just like an arcade. It's really awesome. And as you know, that game back there, Samurai Showdown 2, I will do a review on it later. One of my favorite games. Gotta say that a lot. There's so many favorite games. I love Samurai Showdown 2. It's awesome. Actually, Samurai Showdown 1 was definitely, at that time, revolutionary, in my opinion. But out of all the versions of Samurai Showdown, Showdown 2 is my favorite. You know, I think it went all the way up to 5. I can't remember. Okay, so GDM to Like DM on Sonia. That one I used to use on Ubuntu. Yeah, Like DM is on there. Hey, Viper29 Game. Hey, what's up? Thanks for joining. That's MAME, I think, or you might be using the emulator on a Shatter, MAME. Rose, Geek, you should make a video on how to install and use different emulators. You know, I might do that in the future, Rose. I did actually do one, but it's really only for my subscribers. So, no, not my YouTube subscribers. If you go to my website at geekoutdoors.com, I don't talk about this much, but I have a whole bunch of other stuff on geekoutdoors.com. I do have a website. I've written over like, I think 100 blog posts. So it's a place where I could share a lot of my own thoughts outside of my YouTube channel. And I also offer different things on there too. So if you go to my website at geekoutdoors.com, if you sign up for my mailing list, you will get different stuff. Okay, so on there I have different videos, and I'm also adding more stuff as well just for my subscribers. And then also if you go to my Patreon page, I have different stuff there too. And so I'm trying to, I love creating. If you haven't seen it, I like have over 500 videos on my YouTube channel. But if you look at my website, I have over 100 blog posts. I have different videos there as well. If you go to my Patreon page, I think I have like maybe 20 videos or something, and other stuff that I don't. Yeah, Rose, thank you, Rose. Thank you for being a supporter. But I have different stuff, and so I'm trying to create more content. And later on, I will have some help in creating more content in different areas. But I noticed, like, when you start creating, Carl, thank you so much for joining. Thank you. So if you have never been a creator, okay, and people create content every day, and this is in a different tangent, okay, but that's what these bonus round of these live episodes are for. So people create content every day, but they just don't realize it. For example, when you put in a Facebook post, an Instagram post, a Snapchat story, you are creating content. Okay, so people are already content creators, but if you do it more and more, creating YouTube videos, writing blog posts, putting posts, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case might be, you absolutely get addicted to it. You know, you love creating content, and on top of it, in my opinion, you know, when you create content, you are adding value to somebody else's life, somewhere around the world, okay? It could be entertainment. It could be education. It could be sharing your personal life, your personal emotions. Somebody out there is getting value out of the content that you created. And so with that being said, I do encourage, if you are not already doing it, I do really encourage all of you to create content. Okay, and at the same time, if your content actually becomes something that actually helps you make money and earn a living out of it, then that's amazing, because now you get to do what you love. You're able to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and you're able to inspire people every single day. And so that's what I'm working towards. And a lot of what I'm doing here, it's helped me to make a living, you know, in other areas. And so there's so many benefits to creating content. There's so many benefits to being creative. Okay, so I want to put that plug out there. So yeah, so going back, you know, I do have content in many other areas. I am, like I said, my website, geekoutdoors.com. Sign up for my mailing list. I'm constantly trying to update things. I'm writing new blog posts. I try to do new blog posts like once every week. You know, so like I said, I have over 100 blog posts on there. I'm on Snapchat. You know, if you want to get on Snapchat with me, you know, I create Snapchat content almost every other day or almost every day. Okay, so this stuff normally you won't see on a YouTube channel. My geekoutdoors.com, my Snapchat, and my Patreon, of course. My Patreon. I have some really wonderful supporters there. Carl, Rose, thank you so much. I'm creating different content there as well. And over time, I will have way more content as I get more help to produce these. Okay, so let's see what else we said. You should play Minecraft. Very creative. Well, Carl, here's my thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and go further with this content creation stuff. Okay, when you create content on a regular basis, right, you're gonna spend more time creating than consuming. Okay, so whether it's consuming videos, whether it's consuming movies or video games, when you become a content creator regularly, you do less of that. Okay, so if I was gonna create something, right, it would be related to what I enjoy. Okay, so Minecraft would be awesome if I enjoyed it, you know, but if I didn't, then I don't do it, you know, which is what's awesome about creating content. Like what I'm doing now, I love doing this, you know. If I'm playing a video game, I'm gonna go ahead and make an episode out of it. You know, I mean, they're like, what job lets you do that? That is awesome, you know. Or like if you watch my Snapchats, I really enjoy running. I love being outdoors. I don't do as many outdoors episodes on YouTube as much anymore, but I still do them. But most of my outdoors episodes, it's actually on my Snapchat. Okay, so if you want to see me running around in a forest or something, you know, you could check out my Snapchat. Okay, so great. Minecraft. Well, Minecraft is now owned by Microsoft, as you know. But Minecraft, I will definitely agree with Carl on Minecraft in this sense. It allows you to be creative as well, as you know. I mean, and most kids, that is their gateway to creativity. You know, Minecraft is amazing, and it is owned by Microsoft now. But hopefully they'll do really great things with it and not just focus on monetizing. But Notch, who created Minecraft, got to thank him and his team. You know, that is a creative outlet for a lot of young people. Okay, it allows them to, you know, explore their creative side early on. So definitely, you know, I don't know much about Minecraft. My brothers know a lot about it. So Rose, I don't know enough info. I don't know enough info, and if I did make content, I do it more to help. Being paid is not as important to me. Okay, Rose, so I do want to answer that, Rose, because I felt the same way. Like if you look at my early YouTube videos, like I said, I have over I probably have 600 videos. A lot of my videos are unpublished, okay? You will see those if you become a subscriber on my website, or you become a Patreon supporter. You see those videos that I do not publish on YouTube publicly. Okay, but hey, Mike April, thanks for joining. So I do want to address something. I do want to talk about something. Rose is saying, I don't know enough info, and if I did make content, I do it more to help. Being paid is not as important to me. So Rose, I want to address that because I understand exactly where you're coming from. So if you look back at my old videos, like since 2013, if you go to my Geek Outdoors channel, you know, look at the oldest first, you see that there were absolutely horrible videos. You know, nobody was watching them. My very first video was a Double Dragon video, which did get a copyright claim. That's stupid. But I recorded that from a camera recording my TV because I didn't have a screen recorder, okay? That was my first video. You know, I did like 30-something videos, 35 I think, before I did a Geek Outdoors episode. I guess I kind of like gave up. You know, nobody was watching. I think I only had like one video, my Chromecast video, and there's another video that, you know, maybe in like 2 years, I got a total of like 500 views or something in 2 years, and I had like maybe 4 to 5, yeah, 5 subscribers, you know, and so I didn't think I had anything to share with the world, in my opinion. You know, I was just like, well, you know, I like video games, so let me make, you know, videos about video games. And it was definitely not about the money. but I want to get into the money part as well. Because whenever you create content, you have reasons for doing it. Okay, so originally when I created it, I was just like, well, I love video games. You know, I don't have anything else I thought that I could share. And so that's what I did. I just went ahead and put videos. Nobody was watching it, and so I gave up. Okay, but it wasn't until like October 2015 where I thought, well, you know, let me try this again. Okay, because I did enjoy making videos. And some people around the world, even some of them only got like 2, 3 views or 10 views in like 6 months. Hey, somebody watched it, right? And so somebody got value from what I created, which blew my mind. I'm like, okay, but think about it that way. Well, let me just go ahead and create videos. And also, let me show my face too, because all my 35 videos, I didn't show my face. I'm a pretty shy guy in some cases, okay? I'm an introvert, but I'm also outrovert as well. But mostly, I'm more of an introvert. And now, being an introvert doesn't mean that you're shy. You just like get a lot more energy when you're not around a lot of people, okay? And so I was worried about that on YouTube, if I, you know, just not showing my face and stuff. So when I did my whole Geek Outdoors video, my first one, I made it like, okay, look, I'm gonna take this seriously. So I'm gonna make videos as many as I can. And I was like, let me make 3 a week if I can, you know, and let me come up with ideas. And now you look and see how many videos I have. Like I said, if you look at my YouTube channel, published videos, I have over 500 videos. I probably have 600 videos now, you know, and now I'm growing a community, okay? And I think a lot of people around the world, which I never thought would happen, a lot of people are getting value out of it, and a lot of people are giving so much value back to me. And so that's first and foremost, Rose. I just want to point that out. If you don't think that you don't have knowledge, or you don't think that you have something you could share with the world that helps somebody, I would say that's not correct, in my opinion. You do have something that you can share with other people, and somebody will get something out of it, okay? Now, if somebody doesn't get anything out of it, and then you yourself are not really excited to do it anymore, then stop doing it. You know, you didn't lose anything, in my opinion. You only have something to gain, you know. And then if you are the type of person who maybe is concerned about your privacy, which I understand, with showing your face or showing your family or friends, then don't show them. You know, there's a lot of YouTube channels that they just have their voice and they have their screen. You know, you could do that as well. But I think the whole process of this, it helps not only your creativity, right? But it also helps in so many other areas that I just explained earlier. You are helping other people around the world, you know, with your knowledge and your experience. So that's first and foremost. If you don't think you know something, or that somebody will not find value in it, go try it out, because I'm pretty sure somebody will. I will find value in it if you create something. I'll go watch it, okay? So that's first and foremost. Now, second, and let's get into the whole money thing, okay? Because a lot of people who create content, especially on YouTube, it's like, hey, I'm not doing this for money. Why wouldn't you be doing this for money as well? Why not? Why would you not do something that allows you to do something you love, then you get paid for it, then you could do more of it? So for people who say it's bad for you to make money off of your creations, then they are probably broke, or they don't know how the real world works. Because if money wasn't important to you, why are you going to a job and working 40 to 50 to 60 hours a week? You're doing it for money, right? And the majority of people who work a job, they do something that they hate. So all the more reason for you to be a creator, create something that you enjoy, create something that other people around the world could learn from, they get value from, and also make money where you could take care of yourself, take care of your family, and help other people, you know, and you're not going to hate your job. You know, I love doing this. And so that's my thoughts on both doing a YouTube channel, being a creator. Now, it doesn't have to be just YouTube, being a creator, and then on money, okay? Be a creator and make money from your creations. And then whenever you create this, let's think about the long term. Think about big businesses, right? They created something. You're using their products and services every single day because somebody thought of the idea to create something and they took the action to actually create it. Imagine if Linus Torvalds, imagine if Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who creates Tesla. I can't even remember his name now. I can't believe I can't remember his name. Or the creative Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Imagine if all those people decided that they didn't have anything to offer to the world. They decided not to create. That's already one thing. But imagine the impact that they've had. They've created thousands and millions of jobs around the world. They've helped absolutely billions of people around the world. Just think about it that way. So there is a component to both. You could create and make money and still help a lot of people. Because if you think about it like logically, the more people you help that gets value from you, the more money you make. So let's be real. If people did not get value out of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg would not make money, and hence Facebook would not be around. So they're together, okay? So you can be creative and make money and still help a lot of people. And also, I want to get into Bill Gates really quick, because even though he is super rich, right? Even though he created a company that I don't think a lot of people agree with, what is he doing with his money? He's helping to end things like polio. Him and his wife's organization is the largest philanthropic organization in the entire world. They're giving absolutely billions of dollars into research, helping people in extremely poor countries. I'm from a third world country. So when I go back there, people make $7 a day working 12 to 15 hours a day. In some countries you have to sell your kids because they don't have enough money, right? And so these people who have wealth, right? You're using the money. The more money you have, the more people you could help. Okay, and so in this case, I just use those examples. Okay, and so a lot of times when we think about technology, I don't know, I'm sorry, like sometimes we don't think about the impact that they could have other than, what we're seeing right here. These people are helping a lot of people. And so I know that's a long tangent, Rose, but I feel really passionate about that, because if I didn't think of creating something and didn't go do it, there's no way I would be in front of this YouTube channel talking to you right now. I wouldn't, and there's no way I would get to do something that I really, really enjoy. And so I hope that answers your questions on that. I know that was a long thing, but I really believe that if you do want to create something, create it. You are valuable somewhere. Somebody's going to find value, even if it's not for somebody else in the world, for yourself. And then secondly, I think with a lot of hard work and constantly improving, you can make a living out of it, and you can help other people. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else. Job is only great crap that wasted creative people's creativity. Shatter, you know what? I thought the same way you did. And this is something more personal, and a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about here, this is what I talk about on my Snapchat. I talk about more personal thoughts other than what I share on YouTube, or even on my Geek Outdoors as well. So this is the type of stuff that I talk about. And so, if you've never done anything entrepreneurial, right? A lot of times when people see these entrepreneurs, most of the times you're thinking about Mark Zuckerberg, right? He's a multi-billionaire, right? Or Warren Buffett or something like that, right? But what about the person just makes enough to take care of their family? They're entrepreneurs too. And so people who think about those high levels, they're probably never going to get there because they're unicorns. Okay? And so I would think why don't you start making enough just to pay for bills? And then after that, you just keep going up, right? And so when people think about the entrepreneur, they're thinking of those unicorns, and then jobs are bad, And in my opinion, jobs are not bad. Okay, they serve a purpose. So if you're doing more entrepreneurial things, you'll realize that it's just a way for you to get to your goals. Okay, and so in my opinion, if you do have a job and you hate your job, go do something else. That's not the job's fault. Okay, if you don't like your job, learn new skills, which is what I did, and go make money somewhere else. Because when you start getting into the whole world of more entrepreneurial stuff, you realize that your job is one way of earning income and gaining skills. But you also have other ways. Okay, so that's why if you look at any person at these unicorns, or even just people who are successful in business, they rarely have one thing. You know, they could be an entrepreneur and have a job as well. Okay, so they could, I mean, and all of it will funnel into helping them do what they want to do. Because at the end of the day, you need money. You need some type of resource to live, right? So in my case, you know, I do have multiple things that I'm working on. And even when I'm at a job, my mindset is different, right? Because I've been strictly just an employee, but I've also done entrepreneurial things as well. And so think of your job as a way for you to gain skills and to make money, which you can then feed into your other things that you enjoy. Like all the money that I make, I put back into my business. You know, I put back into creating content. I pay for stuff. I pay for services every single month. I pay for, like, for example, TubeBuddy. I use that for my YouTube channel. I pay for that. I pay for my email marketing, Aweber. I pay for that. And all of those are my description. You know, I'm just being real with you. If you want to check out my affiliate link, check it out in my description. I have the services that I use. I pay for TubeBuddy every month. I pay for Aweber. I pay for my web hosting services. And there's many other things that I pay for. Why? Because I want my businesses to be my main income, right? And so whenever you're doing all of this now, and then as you do more of it, you just realize, okay, if there's a job out there that will allow me to gain skills and pay me while I'm learning, then go take it. And just think of it this way, you don't have to be at that job forever. And so that's my opinion on jobs. I agree with you. Before I got into all of this, I hated my job. I hated the whole notion of having jobs. But then I realized that's not the company's fault. The company is paying me. They're actually allowing me to make a living. So why should I be mad at the company? And then when you look at it, when you are the one who owns the company, you look at things way differently. Okay? I mean, so if you are in a job that you hate, they're paying you. They don't have to pay you. And so just think about it that way. And I don't say that in a very mean way, because I've been there. I used to always hate my job, and then I realized that's my fault. That's not the company's fault. And so with all the technologies that we have today, especially with the internet, you can learn absolutely nearly everything from the internet. And so that's how I was able to do all these things, you know. And if I have a client or if I have a job that comes up, I'm going to go do it. You know, if it's something I want to do, then I'm going to go do it. But I know that wherever I go, I have clients, but I will also take a job as well. And so, but I know that it's for me to get better at something else. Okay, so I hope that was another long-winded thing, but I'm also passionate about that as well. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset or you want to develop it, just like what I said about the other one, just go for it. And then at the same time, if you are in a job, I really would feel that just look at it in a different way. Because look at it, one, they're paying you, okay, they're helping you live, so that's important. But secondly, think of what skills you can learn from here, okay, at your job, while you're at your job, while you're doing other things. You don't have to just do your job. You know, I work like every day, like maybe 13 to 15 hours a day. I'm not kidding, you know, but I love doing it. And so, you know, you could get up early in the morning before you go to your job, work on something, or even late at night, you know. And if you have a family, there's 24 hours a day. There's lots of ways that you could do other stuff. And then the idea is eventually your businesses will become your job that you actually enjoy doing. So anyway, let's thanks for asking that though. Thanks for asking that, both to Rose and also I don't know who asked this question. I'm sorry, I didn't see who asked this question earlier. Oh, I'm sorry, Shatter. Yes, Shatter. Thank you so much for asking that. You know, but those are two things I'm very passionate about. Oh, that cool. Yeah, Shatter. Yeah. So I hope that answers that. So Rose, Geek, I guess you are now IT consulting. Now we need another hour of motivation and entrepreneurship. Well, Rose, that's why I have my Snapchat videos. That's why I have my geekoutdoors.com. That's why you could get on my emailing list, because I do have another side of myself that I really enjoy. I enjoy entrepreneurship. I enjoy being really creative, you know, but that's probably not something I'm going to do on the Geek Outdoors YouTube channel, because that's really not the purpose of that channel. But if it's something that my audience likes, then maybe I might do some small videos on that, or maybe I'll create another channel. But if you want that type of content, go to geekoutdoors.com, and especially go to my Snapchat as well, because I do a lot of videos on Snapchat that I do not share on YouTube. So yeah, so wow, that was a really very long episode in terms of very personal, from my geek experience, how I got into Linux, what I love about Linux, how it changed my life, all the way to some more personal stuff that y'all are asking about, you know, being a creator, being creative, about jobs and entrepreneurship. This was really a different episode, but I think being geeks as a whole, it's in our nature to want to learn. It's in our nature to want to be creative. And I really think, I'll be real, I really think geeks are probably the most entrepreneurial type people, in my opinion. Okay, so if you look at all the top people in the whole world, I don't care what country's from, you know, if you look at all the top people in the whole world, they normally have some geek in them, normally. Okay, and it's not just money. The top people in the world they have those traits that are very similar to a lot of geeks. And so if there wasn't anything else, it's like an hour and 20 minutes. And so I did hope that a lot of you got value out of this video. Yeah, and thanks, Mike. And thanks for all of you joining, okay? Mike, Rose, Shatter, Carl, who else is on there? Viper29. There's so many people on here, and I say this every single episode. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. And if you don't already have a YouTube channel, I really recommend you create one. I talked about it last episode, checked out Viper29's gaming channel. It's a really cool channel, you know, but if he didn't decide to create that channel, we'd never see it, you know. So create your channel, create something, you know, then you can share with the rest of the world, and then maybe we'll talk about it on this episode as well. And so if you did get value out of these videos, leave a like and subscribe. And as always, if you did want to support my channel further, you could do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors.